I speak to you in the name of the one who invited us to the table. Amen. On Sunday, we joined the crowds and the saints throughout history, waving our palm branches, shouting our greatest hopes, spiting tyranny's reach, giddy before the bill comes due. Jesus was celebrated, but the mood was turning. He had become radically attractive to more and more people. Had his message been simply too provocative? Healing on the Sabbath, raising the dead, claiming divinity, exciting the crowds. He was challenging the status quo and the authorities. By Thursday of the same week, his fate seemed sealed. As evening came, a cool wind carried a mix of smells: roasted lamb, bitter herbs, anise, and hyssop. Vendors made last offers for their goods. A sunset of golds and purples peeked through cracks in the city walls. Storekeepers began shuttering their doors. Parents called after their children, not wanting to lose sight of them. The disciples moved through the emptying streets in search of a room to gather with him. He had one more sermon to give, one responding to the question we continue to ask. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, not just privately, but in community, not as a one-off, but as a practice, as sustenance, eat this bread and drink this cup. In a world that divides, excludes, expatriates, the Eucharist invites us all home, offering welcome, plenty, clarity, and blessing. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, proclaim the Lord's death. In an age that moves quickly, forgets easily, avoids pain at all costs, and chooses distraction, Jesus insists that we face what is difficult and sit with it. Proclaim the Lord's death. See it in the collective injury to communities, the pillage of the earth, the battery of dignity, as well as our own missteps and longings. Proclaim the brokenness of the world, not as resentment or to fuel retaliation, but to acknowledge its reality and our complicity in it. In doing so, in attending to, rather than avoiding what is present, we climb the stairs to the Last Supper and realize this meal is not for farewell, but for finding our way. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Until he comes. This anticipation is the church's heartbeat, God's lifeblood coursing through time, steady, strong, certain, sustaining. It holds our faith while the world is not as it should be. We are moving towards God's promise of new creation. Until he comes. Until he comes. We have a vital role in that. This Jesus movement, N.T. Wright said, doesn't just run on its own steam. It isn't just the accidental product of historical opportunity. God is at work, and one central way is through the people who work, who pray, and who make difficult decisions. Through our participation, the Church lives into our part, our relationship with what Udo Schnelle calls the act of God in history. To take communion is to encounter God's presence, to be changed by it, and to bring life and love to the suffering world. During supper, Jesus got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet. More than a moment of tenderness, Jesus gestures toward a world transformed by humility and shared love that we can participate in. Jesus' foot washing is an act that Sandra Schneiders explains means to dismantle the established order. By refusing his own power, Jesus challenges any authority that uses fear or brute force as a means of control, erasure, or exploitation. The idea isn't simply to rewire the systems and regimes of the world, it is to change each of us as well. Peter's initial refusal of Jesus' gesture, Schneiders points out, is less about not wanting Jesus to bow down to him than about Peter's fear of losing his own sense of power. If Jesus were to wash Peter's feet, then Peter would have to give up his power and wash others too. Our own discomfort about foot washing, Peter reveals, is about more than our dirty, bunioned, or calloused feet. Our dis-ease is in the leveling of power between us that washing each other's feet invites. And the greatest scandal of it all, if we have to wash other people's feet, that might include Judas too. Jesus' message shows a way of serving, of giving, of loving that realigns our self-protection. It steers us away from impulses which limit our loving, like serving others only as a strategy or a means to an end, which masks manipulation, or blaming people for their needs, which perpetuates inequality, or hoarding power, which leaves everyone lacking. Our impulse to withhold, we confuse with security, but it is nothing short of death. In 2018, a bottle of 1945 Romanée Conti wine was sold at auction for over $550,000. It's one of the rarest and most coveted bottles of wine in the world. Only 600 bottles were made in a legendary post-war vintage. By all accounts, it is exquisite. Yet bought for over $500,000, no one drinks it. It's kept in a temperature-controlled case, protected by insurance, desired by collectors. Too precious to serve, it is locked behind its own value. It is no longer wine, but an artifact. Jesus' invitation to us at the Last Supper teaches us that holiness is not something to admire from a distance, like a painting or a fragile object. It shows a way to avoid making God's presence among us into a relic. Holiness is not only not too holy to touch, it is literally placed into the hands of generations, given again and again. We touch God's presence into our world by taking, blessing, breaking and sharing. And its greater significance is in its action, manifest in our love of one another, a way of living taught in the same narrative that calls us to the table. In the upper room, Jesus gathered with his friends who were about to have their lives turned upside down and prepared them with what they needed. When the world feels spun off its axis, hurtling who knows where, in this story, at this table, in service to others, we hear the answer to our burning question: what can we do? Take communion. See reality. Serve humbly.